What's going on, chat? Back for another episode of Talk About It. Today's guest, Kyrstin Price, well-educated individual from Louisville. She's currently employed at Kentucky School for the Blind, or KSB. She's dedicated her life in large part to helping others through teaching and personally. Kyrstin's kind, loving, and I'm very excited to have her on the podcast. Everybody, welcome Kyrstin. Kyrstin, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Good intro.
Yeah, yeah,
I left out Auntie.
yeah. That
That's a
is
big
that is
one.
my most important current role.
How would you uh, how would you give your own bio? I guess like if you had to give one.
I always hate having to do my own bio because I was like, I don't know, I didn't do anything important or interesting, so I probably wouldn't change too much. I've pretty much dedicated my entire life to doing one of those things: teaching, going to school, or taking care of people. So
I mean, but all those,
pretty spot on.
I guess two of those Alyssa's in chat. That's pretty cool too. You get to live interact with people. But Alyssa said the one and only.
That's
um,
me, the one and only Auntie Bluey.
but I feel like the teaching and the helping people kind of go hand in hand though, especially in your line of
Yeah,
work.
for sure, for sure.
Okay.
But I think there's also a lot more to teaching than like just helping people. I think it is commonly like it's like a common misconception is that people are like, oh well, like you just are there to like help people. And while that's true, I don't think that's like the only goal or objective.
Okay. Build on that more. What do you mean by that?
So like I feel like yes, like in part I want to help individual people, but I also feel like by educating individuals, um, I'm like making the world more educated, like my little corner of the world. And so doing that then like makes the world a better place. I don't know. That seems kind of
But at the same
like
time though,
action.
isn't that helping people?
Oh yeah, I also like helping on a like a more global scale, I guess.
Okay,
So like
I get what
I
you're
don't
saying.
see it as like small scale.
Right.
It is small scale, but I also see it in like a broader perspective. Um, but then also I think um there's a lot that I get out of teaching and like I learn a lot and like I have like been improved by like engaging with the students that I work with and like with my peers. So I feel like it's also like bettering me. So I think it's not just like a one-way street in that sense.
But you love it though.
I do. I do.
I feel like
I
that has a
honestly like when I was like teaching I really liked it, but I don't think it was sustainable because there's just so much that goes into being a teacher and like especially a teacher like in a special education setting because there is a lot of paperwork and it's just like there's more than just like making lessons and like creating content for like students and it was a lot like honestly I probably worked if I'm being realistic, some weeks like 60-hour weeks. Um, so it just wasn't really like a sustainable thing that you could do forever if you want to have a family or a life or anything outside of just your job.
I'm feeling that right now.
So what'd you say?
I'm feeling that right now.
Yeah, yeah. So I initially when like my job was changed, like I didn't have much of a say in going to this new job, and so which I've been doing for 6 years, I think. And so I was like really kind of pissed about it. Um, oh, hold on. Is this a cuss word friendly pod? Because
Yeah, for sure.
I was informed today that I am the cussing sister. So I just wanted to make sure because
No, it's
I
actually
don't
funny.
even,
It's funny that you say that. So, I was talking to Tiff. You met her. She's at the baby shower.
yeah.
And she was like, who's on the podcast tonight? And I was like, oh, like my sister Kirsten. And she was like, is that the one that doesn't really care what she says?
Yes, that is the one who
I was
has
like,
very
I mean,
little.
to an extent, they're both like that. So you have to be more specific. I was like,
That is
blue
true.
hair, and she was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, Kirsten.
Yeah, so Alyssa was telling me earlier that one of John's family members was like, "Oh, your sister, is that the one that was cussing a lot at the wedding?" And I was like, "Was that cussing a lot at the wedding? Probably. I don't fucking know."
The cusser.
So that's me, the cusser. Um, but so I'll get back to that. But I forgot what I was saying. Something about um oh, like when they changed my job, I was kind of pissed because I liked my job. I liked being able to do the thing that like I'm passionate about in my like free time, which is reading. But I got to do it with my kids and like talk about books and like teach them to like love books. So when they changed my job to what I do now, which is largely teach like daily living skills, I didn't want to do that. But now that I'm in this position, like I can't imagine doing anything else. It's so fun. It's so like it's so different. Like every day is never the same. Um and we get kids who have all different like levels of skill and ability when it comes to like doing different daily living tasks, so like cooking or like self-care or like using technology or like whatever it is. So like because it's so varied and because I get to work with kindergarten through 12th grade, um, it's just there's never a dull moment and it's just so much better. And I don't have as much paperwork, so I don't bring home as much work, so it's a much more sustainable model of teaching.
Well, that too, like
And
going off what you were saying about kind of um, like going off to helping people. Like this is, yes, you're making an impact for the world, like you kind of said, but like also like a direct impact on this person. Like if it wasn't for you, then they would be dependent on other people their whole life. So
yeah, for sure. And I think that's like something I'm really passionate about is like independence and getting these kids to a point where they are able to do things for themselves that maybe people in their lives don't recognize that they can do for themselves, or they don't have the tools to be able to show them how to do those things for themselves. And it's kind of morbid, but I always think about um, at some point our parents aren't around, and so um, there's going to be nobody to do it. There's
right,
nobody. There's going to be nobody to take care of these kids when they're adults and their parents aren't here anymore. And so that's kind of the where I operate from is what are you going to need to be able to know and do to be like an efficient, effective adult.
a contributing member to society.
Yeah, for sure.
No, I like that. Um, Kind of going off of the like we kind of talked about it before, but the line of like not getting into politics, but like kind of there. In that sense of being a teacher, you kind of said like it's not sustainable to work 60-hour weeks, like you're not getting paid for it. In the sense of like, are you pro incentive based pay for teachers, or are you pro like base pay for teachers?
I think kind of a combination. I think currently like I make a pretty good wage, but uh I also supplement that through like I coach, I work summer school. So like what my salary is on paper looks larger because of those other things that are like added to my check. And if I didn't do those, like I would not be able to afford the lifestyle that I have. And I wouldn't say that I have a largely lavish lifestyle.
Except for your
Um,
heating bill, but yeah.
yeah,
No,
I mean, I do have an expensive car, and I could trade it in and get a less expensive car. But other than that, that's really, I mean, I've sat down and looked at my, budget over the last year and a half and tried to cut some things where I can. And I mean, really, there's just not any place. So I think incentivizing teaching is good, but because I also have worked with people in the past who just do the bare minimum and like that's not fair to the students. And so but that I think that what you're incentivizing makes is important because I don't really believe in like testing as a measure of like your intelligence or your ability to like know and do something because there are too many variables that determine whether or not you're going to be successful on a test.
absolutely,
So
yeah.
like if you get up in the morning and you don't eat breakfast and you only slept 3 hours last night because you had to babysit your siblings because your dad was working his second job,
Are you talking
and
from
you come to school
experience
the
right
next
now?
Yes, and you come I mean, no, not really, but and you come to school the next day no, because I was always a great test taker except for math, and
Yeah,
then
that's
don't
fair.
fucking ask me. But if you like, if those are the, like, stipulations of your, like, life, and then you come to school to take a test, you're probably gonna be tired, you're gonna be hungry, you're not gonna be focused, like, and those are, like, of no fault of your own. Like, you can't control a lot of things when you're a kid and even when you're a teenager. And so I just think that taking the result of a test and then using that to like monetize a person's worth in a classroom is not really a valuable tool.
That's fair.
So I don't know how you would like incentivize
Well,
it. I
even
don't
even
know.
deeper than that though, like from my perspective, is like I grew up with ADHD. I've had it, but I was always told I didn't have it. So I just like that was just how my brain worked. I just dealt with it until I got to college, and then they tested me and were like, "Yeah, you have it." And I was like, "Ah,
Yeah.
shit." But I mean, Kim told me the whole time I was growing up, like, you don't have it, you can focus on things. And then later in life, I found out that's not how ADHD works. So like,
Well, and I think the
add
same
that
is
to
true of
that.
like yeah, I think the same is true of me. Like, I have just generalized anxiety. Not to speak too much on like other people's diagnoses or whatever, but Alyssa definitely has test anxiety. So it's like all of us have something that limits our ability to like be at 100. So, and then I mean, when you take into perspective the work that I do, maps and graphs and charts that aren't accessible, and then expect them to be able to understand how to read them, and it's just not something that's feasible. It is feasible with the right tools, but those tools are not offered in a standardized setting or standardized testing setting. So I think yes to incentivizing doing good work as a teacher, but I think no to the way that it has been like talked about most broadly, which is like through test scores, because I don't think that's an
That's
accurate
fair.
measure of whether you're
See,
a good
that's
teacher.
that's one of the things that I was ignorant on. I didn't really know what. Like, I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't we pay teachers based off incentive? But if the incentive is how well their kids are taking on tests, then it's like that doesn't make any sense. Like, we should be able to find a way, even if it's like a clock in, like when you're working, you clock in. You know what I mean? Because kind of like you said,
Yeah,
you're
and it's
working
hard to
crazy hours.
quantify, right? So it's something that's really hard to quantify, right? Like how good of a teacher you are.
Right.
So because there are so many like variables that are outside of your control. So I think, you know, giving I think some things that would go a long way towards making the profession better and more sustainable would be giving teachers more than one planning period to be able to create content. And because a lot of times what happens is that teachers fall into these ruts because they have a lot of stuff to grade, or like they have a lot of extra paperwork to do for like goals that they're monitoring or whatever the case is, and then they end up using like canned, like prepackaged like curriculum. And that's not to say that like that's not to shit on all of those, because there are some that are good, but there are some that are not so good. And I think that you get to a point where like you're just burnt out and you're like, well, I have to teach something, so like this is what I'm gonna do,
Right.
because it's like the path of least resistance, because you have so much other shit you have to be balancing. And I speak from like the perspective of only having like a max of like 12 kids in a classroom, and like some of these people who are out here doing the same work have 30 kids per class, and then they have 6 preps a day. So you're looking at 3 times 6. What is that? 120 kids a day. 180 kids a day. Like that's a shitload of kids that you are providing feedback for, and like trying to um you know contact somebody's parent because their kid was misbehaving, or trying to get to the root of a problem of why a kid is not like focused in your classroom. Like teaching is so much more than just like standing in front of someone and being like, okay, here's some information you need to know.
Right.
There it is like I mean, it's parenting. I mean, you are parenting, counseling, you're doing triage like all day long. I read somewhere that like teachers make more like split second decisions than surgeons per day. And when you're in the thick of it, like it's just go, go, go. And you've got one kid who needs to go to the bathroom, another kid who doesn't have his materials, another kid who is tired and sleeping, and like you're constantly trying to like manage all of these people. And then like the older they get, they're largely less manageable because they have more autonomy and more like will to be like, fuck you, I'm not doing that. So
Right. Well,
so I
also
mean
too, like
there are
I'm thinking from a business standpoint of like I think a lot of the times we overlook things as businesses, like college, university, like a university, that's a business. Like as much as people say,
yeah,
oh, whatever, it's a business. So I think of it from that
yes.
perspective. I know that a lot of colleges rely on student feedback to either like let go of teachers or figure out, the trajectory of the school. Which to an
Yeah.
extent that works as more of an adult mindset. Like, of course, there's gonna be
Mhm.
people who are assholes that get shit on as professors. It's kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm thinking like that aspect, but at the same time, how are you gonna ask a 4-year-old like, "Hey, how do you feel about your teacher?" Because then
Right.
if you even
And
extend that to doing another one for parents, I'm sure there's parents that don't like the teacher because the teacher keeps calling because their kid's bad. So it's like,
right. And I think you could do an aggregate score of those things plus like really, really what I think makes a good school is having like the administrators in your classrooms, like knowing what your teachers are
right,
doing. And it's really hard again because those folks are being tasked with a lot of shit that really shouldn't be their job. But getting people in the classrooms to be able to see like firsthand and not just like, oh, I did a drive by and I like checked in and like it looked like at this one moment in time that you were doing what you were supposed to do, but like really, really like being able to like go into the classroom on multiple occasions and like do observations and give like critical feedback. To me, that was one of the best things that I ever got as a teacher was having like good administrators come in and like say, okay, well, why are you making this choice? And like, what other choices could you make to like make it better? But I also used student feedback like in my instruction. Like I would ask, you know, how did this unit go? Like, what could we have done differently? What was your favorite like thing that we did? And also like I gave them a lot of choice. So when we were picking books and stuff, I never signed just one book and was like, here you go, like this is what we're reading. So I would say, here's 6 books that all have similar themes. You guys can pick. And some semesters I would have 6 kids reading 6 different books. And then some semesters I would have, you know, 2 groups of 3 that were, each reading a book. So it really just depended. But again, that makes more work for the teacher because a lot of times were not books that I'd read. And in order to like be on top of my game, I needed to know what was in the book and have like had to the opportunity to
right,
process, that information and then be able to like hear their like thoughts and like commentary on it and like be able to I don't know if it's right or wrong because I feel like language arts is more subjective than right or wrong, but you know, there is a right or wrong in like how you're analyzing information. And so being able to see if like, oh, are they on the right track or do they have no idea what this is about?
Well, I even use that method
Um
whenever I'm speaking. Like if I'm talking and I look out and people are sitting there glazed eyes, like, are we following? Like, is somebody lost? Like, do I need to double back? And most times they're like,
yeah,
no, like we're following you. And then sometimes they're like, yeah, we have no clue what the fuck's going on. And that usually is
yeah,
like when I'm
for
mentally
sure.
burnt out and I'm trying to speak on something and I just ramble, and then I have to go back to where they lost me and then like I speak it in the right direction, but sometimes it's just like all over the place. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then like you get 12 teenagers in a room and if it's not something they're super interested
Right.
in, there's always the detour of like, oh, how can we get her off track? Like what one tiny thing can we
Right.
pull on, like what one tiny thread can we pull that then will get this completely devolved into a conversation about something that has
Yeah.
nothing to do
I've had plenty of
with
I've had
whatever.
teachers and professors like that.
It's
And
hard not to do it, like
yeah.
really, it really is.
Well, it was difficult for me because like this is ADHD trying to focus in a lecture that I actually am paying for. So I'm like, let me learn some shit.
Yeah.
And then somebody gets him distracted and he starts talking about we're talking about macro management and as soon like just flips a switch. He's talking about a potato farm in Idaho, and I'm like, what the fuck are we talking about?
Yeah, yeah. And then that was hard when I was teaching two preps of the same like class. So if I had like two ninth grades or whatever, like one class would get totally off topic, or they would have a really good like insight or something that we ended up talking about for a long period of time, and then we were completely like no longer aligned. The two sections of the same course were like days apart in the schedule, and I'd be like, well, that sucks.
Well, yeah, and that's a struggle too. Teaching too, you have to like meet deadlines and
I think that is one of the things that's really hard on teachers. Not so much in my role, just because I think we know that um, we have to take test results kind of with a grain of salt, because there are so many um, like factors that play into whether or not our students specifically are going to do well. So like testing has never been like do or die at my job, but in a lot of places it is, and I think that um, like push to really like ensure that these kids are like doing well, it makes it harder for teachers because you can't talk about things that kids might be more interested in, or like stay on something that you know they really need because they don't have it, because you have to move on to the next thing, because at the end of the year there's going to be a test and there's x number of things that they're going to be tested over. And so I think um part of that problem is that like federal funding, not to get super political, but federal funding comes from in a lot of places how well your school performs on tests, and if you don't do well, you don't get money, you don't get funding, and then the other way that schools get money is through um, like the property tax in the area that they're located. So if you live in an area that is less good in another area, um, you don't make enough money to run your school because the property taxes are
hmm.
lower. So the federal government subsidizes all of that and like helps make sure that those schools can run. But if you aren't meeting certain benchmarks, then they will take that money away. And so
Go back to the
that's why
part
it's kind of
where you're talking about you get tested based off like kids get tested on if they're at a certain level. For how does that work for you? Do you fall into that same category? Is it like different for disabled school in the sense that
so
like
every student in the state of Kentucky, basically, unless you're like in a coma, is tested at certain grade levels. So um, they don't start testing until the third grade. So kindergarten through second grade, there's no like state testing. Then third grade they get tested, third through fifth, I think, and then the middle school gets tested, and then when you get to high school, it's more patchy, and I don't really remember exactly when. It's been a long time since I've participated, just because like the students that I see go to public school most of the time and come to me for a short period of time, so they get tested in their public schools. But high schoolers, they have to do the like the pre ACT, and then they have to do the actual ACT, and then
I
uh,
know that, but I'm saying in the
get
sense of
tested.
what you do in like the teaching life skills.
So my kids don't get tested on those skills specifically. There are a set of standards. It's called the expanded core curriculum, and and there are seven areas, 9 areas. I should know that. But there are like different areas. So like one is like social emotional. So like are they able to have appropriate conversations? Are they able to like manage their feelings? Are they and some of that like kind of bleeds into other like areas, um like other people's area of expertise, so like counselor, school psych, social worker, that sort of thing. But then like daily living, so can they make the bed? Do they know how to chop food? Can they spread peanut butter? And like these aren't all like isolated skills, but like the generalized skills. So can you spread? Can you cut? Can you make a bed? Can you call the doctor and like request whatever you need at the doctor? So a lot of the skills that we teach are skills that normally like you and I would learn by watching or like paying attention to like the adults in our lives, or just by like figuring it the fuck out. So these things have to be like more explicitly taught to kids who like can't see.
So what if some
So
like
I
what
always
if
use
say a student
I
doesn't know?
always use the example of making making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Nobody ever taught you how to make a peanut butter and jelly
Yeah, just
sandwich.
learned.
You just watched somebody make it, and
Right.
then you were like, "Oh, okay, this is how you do it."
Right.
And so like for my kids, they can't watch somebody do it and then know how to do it. So I have to explicitly say, okay, you're going to take the bread, you're going to put it on a plate or wherever on a napkin, and then you're going to like, and it's all of the steps, right? So it's not, you have to be very explicit about like how you're describing what to do.
Right.
So if I say put the peanut butter on the bread, like, okay, I'm putting this jar of peanut butter on top of the bread.
Right.
Like that's not how that works, you know? So you have to
Smear
like
the peanut butter
really
with a knife on the bread.
right. So you have to like we call it a task analysis. So we look at like all of the tasks, and a lot of this I do because I've done this for a while now. Like a lot of it I do mentally, but if it's a new skill that I'm teaching, sometimes I will write down like what are the steps to this thing that I'm doing. Brushing your teeth, that's one that's kind of hard to explain. Um, we were just talking the other day about we have a couple kids who don't know how to blow their nose, and I don't know how to fuck to teach them that. Like it's such a weird thing to have to teach because if you've never watched anybody blow their nose, right? Like it's a very specific. You take your tissue and you put it over your nose, and then like most people hold one side and like blow, and then hold
But
the other
like
side and blow.
even if you're trying to explain it to somebody who has seen, like you compare it to things they've seen before, and you can't do that.
Yeah,
Damn, that's crazy. But
and so
also, I
it's
will
like
say you do teachers playing sometimes. You do that shit with like normal shit. I've caught you doing it
yes, I
before.
do,
Like you're like, oh
I
yeah,
do.
no, do it this way. I'm like, all right, I know how to do it. All right,
Yeah,
but
yeah, no, I do. I mean, but it's a habit because I just that's
yeah,
what I do
no, that's
all
fair.
day, every day.
But you know, I remember
I
talking about it. That's kind
also
of
find
crazy.
myself like having to hesitate with like adults in my life because I am very quick to be like, "Do you need help?" Or can you do it? And then I'm like, oh shit, that's an adult. They are probably good. They're probably
That
good. But
actually
like at
that
the
makes me
first sign
think.
of a struggle, you're like, oh, I can't get this water bottle open. I'm like, do you need help? If you need help, what are you supposed to do? And they're like, fucking keep trying. I don't know. Like my job is like, do you need help? If you need help, what do you need to do? Like you got to ask somebody. But like in my adult life, I'll be like looking at like my peers, like, do you need help with that? And they're like, nah, bitch, I got it.
That actually makes me think. You know, have you heard the theory about like color blindness in kids? So
No.
like at a certain point in time, they like didn't do like routine tests. Like they just stopped doing them of like testing if the kid's colorblind.
Yeah.
So with that concept, at a certain point, a kid gotten through to adulthood thinking that orange was blue because that's what color he saw.
Hmm?
And they're just like, "Hey, this is orange," and he's like, "Oh, word, okay." And then he's in public and he looks like a dumbass because he's like, "Oh, that's a nice orange shirt." They're like, "That's fucking blue. What are you talking about? Are you stupid?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny because two things. One, and you know this, but my friend Bo, who I work with, he is
Yeah.
colorblind in addition to also being blind.
What percentage
Um,
blind is he? Is that how they gauge it?
um,
Percentage?
so it's a scale. So you know, have you ever seen the chart, like the eye chart?
Like the
Like
one,
you know, when you go to the eye doctor and they have like the E at the top and then
bruh,
you know all the other things.
2020, bruh. Come on.
Okay.
I'll read
Well,
the whole
anyways,
odds.
if you've ever seen an eye chart, what you can see at 20 feet, you should be able to read the bottom line at 20 feet.
Got it.
That's if you have 20/20 vision. So 20/20 is reading it at 20 feet, what's on the bottom line. People who have like legal blindness is 2200, which means they can read what we can read at not at 200 feet. That I always get it
Oh
like
shit.
backwards. No, no, no. I always get it backwards. So what we would be able to read at 200 feet, they can read at 20 feet. So, um, like someone with typical vision. So 2200 is legal blindness. A lot of people who
So that's what, two
are
lines?
blind, two lines.
Like the
It's like the
top one?
top. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That big ass
Um,
E?
yeah,
You
yeah,
use the
yeah.
one where it's like the
Um,
E and it's a different way and you have to point? right?
Yes,
Okay.
and they changed the direction because people started memorizing the eye chart so that they could like pretend they could see
Yeah.
when they couldn't. Um, they also have a really cool one for like little kids because like when you're testing like a 3-year-old and they don't know what the letters are, they have a really cool one that has like shapes on it. So it's got like a outline of an apple, outline of a house. So like it's like very basic shapes that like little kids would be able to
Oh.
identify. That then they're like apple, house,
Well, why can't they just use
whatever,
the E? Like they
heart.
don't understand that it's backwards.
Well, no. Like if you're 3, you don't know what, right? So like
Oh, you
you
don't know.
don't know. You haven't learned to
Ah,
read, so like you
yeah,
don't know what direction the letters are
that's
supposed to
fair.
go. And like when I like if you've never done an eye test, usually it's got a row of letters and it's like ZSPHLTV, and you have to read them all as far as you
Yeah,
can read
right.
them, like down the sheet. So like if you don't know letters yet, you can't do that. So I thought it was really cool that they created like a little kid version,
Yeah, that is cool.
or like for people with like cognitive disabilities who maybe like don't know how to read and they don't know all their letters. Um, you can just do like the shapes, which is pretty badass. But
Let me ask you
all
this:
of that to
now that you
say,
work with blind kids, do you catch your like? Are you aware of the mistakes you made in the past taking eye exams?
no, not really, because well, now I have 2015, so
That shit's dropping.
uh,
You better eat some carrots.
no, 2015 is good. 2015 is better than 2020.
Oh, you
You
got
don't want to
super
you don't want a
fucking.
higher number on the back end.
Oh, okay.
So like 2400 or 2600 is probably where like a lot of the kids that I work with reside,
I didn't know it
which
was better than
is
2020, to be honest. But you also got LASIK. That doesn't count, bitch.
yeah,
Okay.
not right. So you can have like 2010, I feel like, but you got a fucking eagle eye. You can fucking laser in
2020.
on shit.
Yeah. Done wrong.
2020. But yeah, so that's how they measure legal blindness. Um, I don't know specific, but they also do like field vision. So like what you can see like out here. So like that's part of
That's
like
the one you put your fucking chin on the thing, right?
yeah, and then they have like the things that show
Do you
up.
know how long it's been since I've done an
Um,
eye exam?
Probably like a really long
Like
time.
a full workup. Oh, it's too long. And I've been on a campus for 4 years or 8 years now.
That
That
has a school of
yeah
optometry.
yeah yeah yeah.
Yeah, you should probably see them and before you leave and be like, "Hey, check these out real
No,
quick."
I'm good. I can still read shit from hella far away. I probably got
Okay,
25.
25. I probably not. I'm gonna go and doubt it. But yeah, so I don't really know what like his diagnosis is per se, but I do know he has a lot of field loss. So his eye condition is degenerative. So he's
So
losing
it's getting
vision.
worse.
So like, yeah,
And you said it's like a
um,
pin, right? Like his vision.
yeah, and it just
Damn,
keeps getting like smaller. So he
damn.
just basically has like central vision in the middle that looks like a straw or
That
smaller
man's
than a
looking at a
straw.
fucking peephole.
Yeah,
That's
yes,
crazy.
exactly, exactly. So like his field of vision
But
on the
less,
sides.
it's fucking fisheye. It's just a flat peep. It's just a hole. Damn.
Right. But also everything for him is in black and white. Like he doesn't have any color vision either.
Fuck, dude.
So yeah, so it's black and white and also just a tiny like little pinhole. But he so the condition that he has is like genetic. So there are other people in his family who have it, so he wasn't surprised that he got like this condition or got diagnosed with it later in life, and that's what happens with a lot of the kids that we work with is that they start to lose their vision middle school, high school, and it's really really like traumatic for them, especially to be like 13, 14, looking forward to having all of the experiences. One of the big ones that really causes a lot of chaos is driving. um, losing the ability to be able to drive for a 14-year-old is
Shitty.
kind of like really just like devastating. So anyways, all of that to say, like, he has a degenerative condition. He knew it was going to happen, but I always loved when he tells his story because he was in college and was at his like dorm or wherever he was living with his roommate, and he had like gotten up on Saturday to like watch cartoons and turn the TV on, and everything was gray. So he looked at his friend. He's like, "Dude, the fuck's wrong with the TV?" His friend was
Did he
like, "What are you
not
talking
realize
about?"
the
And he was like,
fucking
"What?"
world was black and white?
Well, he was like, "No." He was like he had color vision his entire life, and then he lost it. Like he just woke up one day and it was
But that's
gone.
what I'm saying. But like,
So
he looked at his boy. He didn't realize that the whole world was black and
well,
white,
yeah,
not
it
just
was
the
like he
TV.
said like the lights. He said the lights were out, and like because of his
Ah,
condition, it's harder to see in the dark. So he just was like assuming that he was seeing in shadows because it was like dark in the house.
ah.
And he like put the TV on, and the cartoons were in color. And he was like, "The fuck's going on with our TV?" And oh boy was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Why is this shit in black and white?" And his friend was like, I think you need to get your eyes checked because it's definitely not." And he said then he went in the bathroom, turned the lights on, and everything in the bathroom was black and white. And he was
Yeah,
like,
that's
"Well, fuck."
trippy as hell. He thought the black and white was
Yeah,
contagious.
yeah, that shit was wild. So
No, but this is what I was asking you about. Like, what did you realize? I remember vividly. Granted, one of those memories that you don't remember you have until you fucking start talking about it. But I remember vividly being in line for an eye test in elementary school, and I did my first eye. I don't know if it was like excitement, but I was fucking pushing my eyeball, son. Like with the spoon or whatever the fuck.
yeah,
And then I went to switch eyes, and I couldn't see shit because I was just pushing my eyes so hard.
right.
So I'm like standing there,
Oh.
like, no, it's good. I can see. Just give me a second.
No, I don't think I like think about those types of things. That is funny, but I think about things that I do. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, are you allowed to say look over there?" And I'm like, "Yeah," or like look at this. Like they're just looking at it in a different way. If it's in braille, they're just looking at it with their hands. So like we don't really change the way that we talk. But one of the things that I am really guilty of doing, and then I like just because the way that I interact with the world is descriptive in this way, is like I'll be like, "Oh, can you hand me that purple folder?" And like they'll be like, "Which one?" And I'm like, "Oh, the purple one." And they're like, and I did this to Bo, and
Like
he was
this?
like, "Which one are you
Huh?
talking about?" And I was like,
Which one's that?
"Sorry, the one on top." Like I just forget, and so it's like, and I think like part of that is like speaks to just like how in every other way, like people that I work with and the people that like I teach are typical. But like so like sometimes you just forget, but we do a lot of blind jokes and
With your kids? That's actually lit.
oh hell yeah.
That's lit.
Especially like we'll do a lot of like I'll say, "Oh, did you see such and such on the, news or whatever?" And they'll be like, "No, I didn't." And I'm like, "Damn, you're right, you didn't see that."
Okay, Miss
Or
John.
like,
Hey, okay, I see you. I see you.
yeah. Or it'll be like, "Hey, this and this," and I'll be I'll like the kid will say something, and I'll have a sarcastic like comeback, and they'll be like, "Dang, I can't believe you just called me out like that." And I'm like, "Yeah, you didn't see it coming, did you?" And
Ooh.
that's always a good one. That's always a fan favorite. So
No, that's cool as hell. And honestly, I didn't even think about half of it. Half of the things you just kind of mentioned. It's just like trying to explain to them how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I've never seen it. That's wild to think.
yeah, it's crazy. One of the
Wild.
things, like, so I was in an interview and I was not being interviewed. I was like on the panel, and the person like asking the questions was like, "How would you teach a blind kid how to fry an egg?" And I was like, "Oh fuck, I'm glad they're asking them and not me because this is my job and I don't even know the answer to that question."
Do you know the answer now?
Well, yes and no. Like, it's really that's one of the things that's really complicated, right? So like things that you cook in a skillet that are visual to us to be like, okay, that looks like it's pretty close to done. So the answer is a timer. Like you figure out how long it takes to cook it to the like doneness that you want, and it's trial and error because every stove is different, and so you just have to kind of figure out, how long does it take to make this egg the way that I like it? If it's over easy, over hard, however, um, and then you have to set a timer because
That means you got to eat a lot of
uh,
trash fucking eggs. Damn.
pancakes are hard. Pancakes are hard because
You can't
you
explain like when the bubbles. Yeah.
typically, yeah, the way that I would explain it to a sighted person is when the top is covered in bubbles, you like flip it. But we talk a lot about like finding the edge of the pancake and then like seeing if it feels like heavy or if it's still like not able to get on your spatula because if it's not ready yet, you won't be able to get underneath there with the spatula. But it's definitely one of the like, and that's what I like about this job is that it's really like challenging. And they'll come to me and say, "Hey, I really want to do this thing, but I don't know how to do it. And so then I have to like figure out the puzzle of how to teach them how to do it. Um, and sometimes that puzzle looks like going out to other people who have done it and being like, hey, how did you teach them how to do this? Because I have no fucking clue.
Right.
And then sometimes it's just, okay, well, let's try it and see. But people think I'm crazy because, like, we use knives in the classroom, like, with kids, like, that are totally blind. Like, we teach them how to cut stuff. Um, we've fried, like, with hot oil on the stove. Like, there's nothing that I won't do with them because I just feel like, and obviously that is, like, catered to, like, their ability level. I'm not having, like, kindergartners in the kitchen, like, chopping shit up. That they're not ready for that skill yet. But there's nothing I won't do with a kid who's, like, ready to be in the kitchen and do those things because, again, it goes back to at some point there's going to be no one there to do it for them. So, if they don't learn it now, they're not ever going to learn it. And so, if I'm afraid to teach you, then why would I expect someone who is not trained to teach you to like do it? Like that's not feasible. And like these kids' parents, they try, but they just don't have the like background knowledge to know how to like give them those skills. And
Right.
so I've got a middle schooler right now who she is so smart, but she just has not had any opportunities to like do anything for herself. She's an eighth
Right.
grader. And so, like, just building her confidence has been like a really key this year because she's just so hesitant to do anything. She's scared like that she's gonna hurt herself or like mess something up. And I'm like, it's fine.
That's why you're here.
People who
Right.
have vision, people who have vision make messes in the kitchen all the
Yeah.
time. Like this flour on the table, or like the fact that you
The
drop some shit in the
table.
floor. Like that
The
isn't
floor.
that's fine. I mean, obviously, like we're not eating it, but like the fact that you made a mess is not like an issue.
Right.
Like
I didn't even
it's just
think
part
about
of.
this, bro, but you just put this in my head. I've seen like people that are like visually impaired that stand weird or like have like a weird face, but they don't like that's something we learn. Like you look at somebody like, ah, that's weird. I'm not gonna stand like that.
Uh huh.
That damn.
So we have a kid. We have a kid, and he is so funny, but he doesn't know how to smile on demand. He's totally blind, and if you tell him to smile, he's like, and I'm like, "That's not a smile, homie." Like, but like, how do you teach a kid who
Yeah.
can't see how to
Fuck.
smile? Like, it, his smile is adorable, but it's like also not a real smile, and it's
Right.
because how do you know how to smile? And like, I have resting bitch face all the time, so like, I'm like, I don't know what to tell you, dude.
Yeah.
Like, just turn turn the corners up.
Damn, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing too is that like there are so many levels to doing this job. Like there's just layers to it, and so you know when I started, I didn't even know if I was going to stay in this field. Like, I mean, teaching, yes, but I didn't know I was going to keep teaching like blind kids. And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons that I like it so much is that I'm still learning like new shit, and I'm 13 years in.
Right.
So it's like
Let me ask you this.
it hasn't like
When you're
stagnated.
cooking with kids,
Yeah.
one of those things that you learn like by watching, I guess, would be like somebody's done cutting, then they put the knife down. Is it common for them to just be holding the knife like fucking Freddy Krueger? Yeah. I'd think, yeah,
Yes.
it goes off body language. Like you're so
So
used to watching
we
people.
have to we have to explicitly talk about how to carry a knife because they'll also like carry it like that. I'm like, bro, you're about to stab yourself or
Yeah,
somebody else.
yeah.
Stop that. We have to talk about like knife. We do a whole like it's not a unit, but like when we start cutting with kids, we do a whole like spiel about like knife safety.
You like the fake knives,
And
like the plastic ones first?
we have the plastic ones that are made for like toddlers or whatever that, I don't know if you ever seen like the Montessori
Yeah.
kits where like it's like for like beginning
Right.
kitchen skills. We have those. But our rule kind of is that a sharp knife is the safest knife. It's really hard to cut
I know
shit if you
that.
have
I
a dull
work for a
knife.
knife company.
You did. It's really hard to cut stuff with a dull knife. And the kids, a lot of them, we had a kid a couple years back, and he had never cut anything in the kitchen. He was really nervous. And by the end of the like second or third time he had come, he was like in there just chopping shit up on his own, and like that's what it's all about. And then like it kind of is exists on a spectrum like anything else. So we have some kids who have, you know, who are just visually impaired who have pretty good vision. We have some kids legally blind who have pretty good functional vision, so they've learned to use the vision they have in a really like effective
Like the
manner.
sense of
And
like
then we have
feel.
some kids, or just like being able to identify shapes and like outlines and stuff like that really well. So it just really varies depending on the kid and like what their eye condition is and like what settings they need to like be most effective. Some need high light, some need low light. um, so it just really depends, but I think that's, we have kids that come in who have more vision, and then they'll be working with kids who have less vision, and like our automatic response is like to help. So like, I'm going to move this because it's in the way, or I'm going to do this because it's going to help this other person. And we have to do a lot of like correcting, even like of children and then of other adults that come into our building of like, hey, that's actually not helpful. When you move their backpack to a location that they didn't put it in, now they don't know where it is. And, or their cane. And like, if it's an emergency and they need their cane to
Right.
get out of here, they don't know
Now,
where the hell you put
that
it.
big of a thing, yes, but you had the potential to play some crazy practical jokes and just moving somebody's shit, and they're not gonna know it's gone.
Yeah.
Is that
Also, the best practical joke is to fart and then blame it on
no?
the kids.
That's different, bro.
No, it's the best for sure.
Because they can't like judge people's faces to see who did it,
Oh,
and
yeah.
meanwhile you're just in the corner fucking falling out laughing because you just cropped up
Yeah,
on with
for
the blind
sure.
kids. You're a piece of shit.
Also, one of my favorite pastimes is like when I was teaching like upstairs with the like in the language arts classroom, like kids would change classrooms. So they would be like coming from like math or whatever, like any high school. They'd be coming from whatever class into my classroom, and they'd come in and they'd be like, cussing or like talking shit about somebody. And like one of the things that my kids don't understand about the rest of the world is that just because you can't see them doesn't mean they can't
Right,
see you.
right.
So like they are sometimes oblivious to the fact that like if you're up digging in your nose, I can see you, big dog. Like stop doing that. Like I'll have like second graders and I'll be like, hey, can you stop picking your nose? I'm not. I'm like, I'm watching you. I see you doing that.
Do you think they forget that you're
Like,
not blind?
yeah, yeah. I mean, for sure, because like, I mean, I think like anything else, it exists like in your head as like, oh, everyone's like me.
Right.
So you're like, yeah, like everyone else can't see me, and like,
Mm.
I've had like PDA situations with high schoolers where they're like, rubbing on each other's legs, and I'm like, can you please quit doing that? We're not
I'm
doing anything.
uncomfortable.
I'm like,
Please stop. Thank you.
fuck you. I actually can see, and you are. But I would like it when kids would come in the classroom, and I would be like sitting at my desk or whatever, and I would just be like silent, like I wouldn't say anything, and they'd come in, and they'd be talking shit, like not about me necessarily, but just in general, and I would always be like, hey, just so you guys know, you should probably check a room when you walk into it to see who's in there before you just start talking about stuff, because like you have no idea if that person you were running your mouth about is in this room.
Yeah.
And they're not, but they definitely could be. Or also, you don't know if they're in the room, and I'm gonna go in there and tell everybody what you just said because I heard you. You don't like, you just don't know.
Right. Have you ever caught
But
a
one of
kid
the
talking
practical
shit
jokes
about
that we
you?
currently play on kids is we steal their shit a lot. So like,
That's so fucked up.
if they leave their stuff somewhere it's not supposed to be, like I mean, not steal, but like we'll take it and be like, oh, we don't know where it went, like what'd you do with it? And like it's funny, but it's also a very like real, like they don't understand that when you go in the real world and you just leave your shit here, there, and
It
everywhere,
just
that like
disappears, right?
people are gonna walk off with it. So that's kind of our little game that we play, and they always know it's us. Like me and my co-teacher, they'll be like, "Oh, it was Miss Price and Mr. Sosha." I'm like, "Why are you blaming me?" Well, you guys are always the ones stealing our stuff. I'm like, I'm not stealing anything. You left it. I just found it. So,
I mean, I guess it could be worse. You could
it's
be like
fun.
moving their chair while they stand up. And
Yeah,
then
I would never do anything that would like actually harm them, but it is funny to do stuff like that, or to
you ever caught a kid talking shit about you?
No, they all love me.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say
Well,
yeah.
I won't say all, but I will say that I can count on one hand the number of kids that I knew did not like me in the last 13
That's
years.
good. That's good numbers. Do you think if
Yeah.
somebody was